Yes, everybody, welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or, of course, if you are watching on our fast-growing YouTube channel, that's Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me for another episode of the UNC Football Show, it's our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And, AJ, we got a jam-packed episode ahead, really. There's so many things to talk about. Real quickly, I'm just going to kind of run through the few things that we will be hitting on, starting with signing day, which was earlier this week. So we're going to start with that. Carolina signed 20 signees to the 2023 class. Then we're going to hit on 6 of their transfer portal pickups that they picked up so far before we look ahead to their holiday bowl matchup in San Diego against 15th ranked Oregon. So it should be an exciting show and looking forward to kind of diving into a bunch of different topics. So let's start with signing day, which was earlier this week. Obviously, you were in Chapel Hill for the press conferences for signing day, which was a crazy day because I think you were in Chapel Hill for a few hours. Signing day is always a jam-packed day with press conferences and things. And then you had to race over to Charlotte for Carolina's basketball game and eventual win over Michigan. So I'll let you kind of take it away on that because obviously you and Dina were all on top of that. And I think overall it's a class that may not rank as high as some Carolina fans would expect. I think it's Mack's lowest rated class since coming back, but I think the approach has changed a little bit, and I think the type of kids are coming in are the type of kids that Mack and the staff really want to bring. So talk to me about signing day and maybe how some of that approach has changed over, with this class in particular.
Yeah, I had to channel my inner Dale Earnhardt to get from Chapel Hill to Charlotte in time for the basketball.
What time did you get to the arena?
I walked in about an hour before, maybe about an hour before tip-off, which is better than,
you like to get there early, so that's different for you. Yeah,
I like to get there within 2 hours at least. So I was kind of out of sorts, but it was just one of those days. Yeah. I thought that it was a pretty good class for this program and for what Mack wanted. He was pretty clear last year when the way that season ended that the shine was off the program. So when the shine's off, they weren't going to bring in the kind of class they did for this past season's or the current season's a true freshman. They weren't going to bring that kind of group in. So you factor in the shine being off. You factor in the fact that they had to deal with the changing landscape. And there's some elements of the changing landscape that Mack just doesn't like. And so you bring in some kids in the 21 class that were very highly touted. They don't play right away, or they're not progressing the way they think, or they're asked to move to a position they don't want to move to, and then they bolt. So how many of these 4 and 5 star, 1, 5, and then a bunch of 4-star kids hit the portal and left? So you have to ask yourself, look, we need continuity in the program. We need guys that come here for the right reasons, not just because they think they can get on the football right away because we're North Carolina and they choose us over Georgia or Ohio State. We have to bring in guys that fit here, that are coachable here, that are going to stay here. And if we invest as a staff into them and say, you're going to play this position, and they say, okay, we're going to play that position, I think that's what he wanted. I think that's what he wanted out of this class. I wouldn't say it's a foundational class as far as high-end talent goes, but I think it could be a foundational class as far as culture goes and maintaining a culture in your program. Because things could get haywire. We're seeing some programs out there, it's just total chaos. They're losing a ton of guys. They're going out and buying a bunch of dudes to come in. And are guys really playing for the alma mater, or are guys playing because someone said, well, you're going to get on the field, they made promises, or you're going to get X number of dollars? Yeah. You can't have a good culture, winning culture there. There's a reason some of the schools that spend a ton are kind of struggling because you don't have culture. You don't have a lot of fit in there. And that's a big part of having success in athletics or any organization. So I think that that's what he was going for. Plus, there's some diamonds in the rough, I believe, in this class. They believe it too. They really evaluated longer than they had before, in part because they got on these kids a lot later because of COVID. So there were 3 kids that they flipped from East Carolina that, had there never been COVID, a lot of them would have been evaluated differently and earlier, and maybe they never would have been ECU commits. Maybe they would have been mid-level Power 5 commits instead earlier in the process. And there were some kids that really had big senior seasons that just exploded, like Rodney and Laura. They're like, you know what? We want this guy. We want to get some guys that are trajecting upward. And I also think part of it, Jacob, look around to see what defensive players especially have clearly grown in the program since Mack got here.
A fair point, yeah.
Look at Kamen Rucker. He was a 5.6 guy. Mm-hmm. Cedric Gray was a 5.5 3-star. Will Hardy, people were not excited when Will Hardy committed last year. They weren't excited at all, and he's going to be one of their starting safeties next year. So a lot of that, I think they trusted their self-evaluation, and they continued to evaluate later in the process than maybe they had with some of the more ballyhooed classes. So for that, I think it's a solid class. I think it's a group of 20 kids that, for the most part, will probably remain in Chapel Hill, and I think that's important. And I think part of the other thing here, Jacob, is originally when the portal became a thing, Mack said, look, we're only going to go out and get guys from the portal. And we'll hit on the portal a little bit more here in a second. But I wanted to add this because I think this relates to the recruiting class. We're only going to go out and get guys from the portal that are going to come in and start. I think that he scrapped that. Yeah. Because they brought 6 kids in, and they're not all probably going to start. So I think that affected the way they went after the recruiting class, because he knows now if they could get program guys and a few diamonds in the rough and a couple of studs, that whatever there are some needs down the road, if an element of a recruiting class or two don't really pan out, you can go out in the portal and fix that problem. Mm-hmm. So I think that's part of why they changed their approach as well.
Yeah, and I think it's a smart approach from North Carolina. I think, you talked about it a little bit there, but you look at some of the higher rated guys that have come into Carolina over the last few years. Have they really made a huge impact? Now they've been some guys out there who've had some good games and have put together some nice seasons at times, but I think overall, it's like you said, some of the players that are kind of making their mark and really impressing consistently are lower ranked kids, and I think that makes more sense. You want kids that want to be there for the right reasons, like you said, and I think North Carolina, with the appeal of the Jordan brand and UNC, the national brand that comes with that, I think it's easy to attract kids that might not want to come for the right reasons. So I think bringing in, trusting the fact that, hey, we're going to try to develop these kids that we know are good football players, and focus on that. I think that's a different approach and a better approach. And the transfer portal with some of the pickups as well, I think has worked out really well for North Carolina too, which we're going to hit on here in just a second, AJ. So I do agree.
But look at the kids they lost.
Yeah, that's a good point. Exactly.
So
and that's kind of in my head right
that's
now,
part of Grimes was originally 21. 5-star. Keyshawn Silver asked to move to offensive line, didn't want to. Mm-hmm. Ra Dilworth, too small to play linebacker, suggested maybe you're better off at safety, maybe star, maybe even corner. Dontavius Nash was the first commit in the class of 21, 4-star kid, didn't quite get on the field right away. Mm-hmm. So, and I asked Mack this in the press conference on Wednesday.
Yeah, I'm about to say, whatever it was.
Everybody else is in holiday season, and we're in football, basketball overlap with signing day, with the portal. And
what
of
is
course,
Christmas, right?
And of course, the stuff with my wife, which is 3 weeks ago today, by the way, when she almost died. Yeah. So we've got a lot of stuff going on. So sometimes I'm not sure what day it is or how long ago something occurred was. But my point is that I asked him, I said, look, these kinds of guys, they're the 3-star who comes in with a little bit of a chip and knows he's going to have to work some to get on the field, but has high-end talent, and he's evaluated as a 4-star by the staff, but maybe doesn't come in with that mentality. Is that an appealing guy to have right now, because they're less likely to just say, screw it and take off? I mean, I didn't ask the question that way, but that's paraphrasing. Yeah. And he said yes. So he's learning as he goes on. You and I emphasized that a lot last year during the 21 season, that Mack's learning a lot about what he doesn't like, but I think that process is still happening. He's 71 years old, but he's still learning. I give him credit for that. I give him credit for adapting and tweaking and changing as he continues on. And he now likes the air raid offense, which he never ran previously. Mm-hmm. So when you go out and bring in Chip Lindsey, hey, we don't want you to bring in an offense here. We want you to just kind of make what we have a little bit better. So I like that about Mack. And I think that some of the shifts that he's made were on the recruiting trail. That being said, if they could land nothing but 4s and 5s, I think they would take nothing but 4s and 5s, because even if half of them don't pan out, you've still got 10 or 12 4 and 5-star guys moving ahead in your program. So, but the situation that they were in with the shine coming off and the landscape changing the way it did, I actually think that it was strategic. When you look at the kinds of kids they went after and pushed hard for, what they invested their resources in, and I actually think that they're very pleased with this class for that reason.
Yeah, and time will tell how the class ends up shaping up. It could end up being, who knows? It could, like you said, it could end up being one of Carolina's best classes, despite it being its lowest rated, with kids sticking around and developing and just making an impact that we haven't necessarily seen, like I said, with some of the higher rated kids. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I know you are right, though. If Carolina can land nothing but 4s and 5s, I'm sure Mack would take that and run with it too. But changing the approach, continuing to adapt with the changing landscape, and he's going to have to continue to adapt and learn, because like you said, there's just so many new things in college football right now.
Let me add one more quick thing that I forgot to mention is also don't discount the NIL factor. Like they had a kid committed, and I shouldn't say this, but anyway, the NIL and money and that kind of stuff is a factor, and they're not going to guarantee stuff up front like a lot of programs will. So that's also part of it. The 5.63 star, who you think is in your mind is maybe a 5.8 or a 5.9, he's not going to command a bunch of cash up front like a 6.04 star will in a lot of cases. Not all of them do, but some of them do. And they had to deal with that, not just in recruiting, but in the portal. And there were also kids that were using schools to raise their rate with the school they were currently committed to. So when some of the kids started reaching out to UNC back in late October, early November, when they were flying high, and we even did a piece about, hey, there's some kids that said no thank you 4 months ago that are now showing some interest. Some of them were doing that just to raise their prices. Giving the schools that they were committed to some uncertainty so they'll fork over more cash. It's really gross, and it's something that Max says needs to be fixed, obviously, and hopefully it will get fixed, because North Carolina's not going to buy. They're not going to be in the buyer's market a lot, because kids are going to be able to get money through the collective that Carolina has, but they're not just going to straight up say $350,000 and you're and you're going to be in Chapel Hill. There are other schools that do that, and Mac's just not going to do that. A, because they don't have the resources for it. B, because it's not the way they're going to roll. And C, you get kids like that into programs, as I mentioned a few minutes ago. What's to say that they're not going to have an eye out the year later to leave? A&M lost a lot of these true freshmen that they bought, and now they're up for sale a year later to go to other schools. So they don't want to deal with that, because, again, it goes back to program culture, which is so big. And you can teach more when the kids are actually there and they're invested in staying there than you can with some kids that are maybe have an eye on other opportunities.
Agreed, AJ. We'll leave it at that. Real quickly, before we move on to the transfer portal pickups Carolina's landed, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor on this podcast. It's myperfectfranchise.net. So, guys, if you're looking to diversify, looking to leave the corporate rat race, gain control of your income and schedule, or what about having unlimited PTO and the ability to create your own income and wealth? Well, guys, look no further than myperfectfranchise.net. Andy Ludicky, founder and owner, longtime Rivals member, and a diehard college football fan. And most importantly, he's a franchise veteran, having owned multiple franchises and businesses throughout his long career. So using his expertise, he helps others find their American dream through a very thorough and free consultation process. So, guys, if you're interested in opening a franchise, there's so many different types of franchises you can open. It's a great time to do so as well. Talk to Andy. It's a free consultation process. You can figure out if it's something you really want to do, if this is a right move for you, and he's not going to charge you for it. So, guys, 100% free. Put your life and career in your own hands. What do you really have to lose? You can find your perfect franchise at myperfectfranchise.net. Check out the links not only to the website below, but AJ did 2 podcasts with Andy about a month or so ago where he talks about his business, how you can get involved, really breaks it down a lot better than I can, obviously, and walks you through what opening a franchise is like, and obviously the many, many different types of franchises you can open, which was a big learning thing for me. I didn't realize there were so many out there, but Andy breaks it down really, really nice for you. Again, myperfectfranchise.net. Click those links below if you want to learn more, and make sure if you do end up talking to Andy, he's a massive Mack Brown fan, so talk some Mack Brown with him as well, but let him know that TarHeelIllustrated.com sent you. Again, myperfectfranchise.net. Big thanks to them for continuing to sponsor the UNC Football Show. All right, AJ, let's talk about these transfer portal pickups. I'm going to go through the list of guys that Carolina has landed. A lot of this coming over the last week or 2 weeks. So center Willie Lampkin, offensive lineman as well, has from Coastal Carolina. You got defensive back Elijah Huzzy from Middle Tennessee State. Got defensive back, or East Tennessee State, excuse me. Defensive back Derek Allen from Georgia Tech. He's the older brother of Marcus Allen, who's a defensive back for the Tar Heels right now. He also got kicker Ryan Coe from Cincinnati, wide receiver Devontae Walker, which I think a lot of Carolina fans are really excited about, from Kent State. He's also a Charlotte native as well. And then you got defensive back Armani Chapman from Virginia Tech. Just to list off a few accolades for those guys: Elijah Huzzy, FCS All-American in his time at East Tennessee State. Got Willie Lampkin, who was all Sun Belt in 2021, freshman All-American back in 2020. And then you got Ryan Coe, who was a two-time All-CAA selection at Delaware, where he was at before he transferred to Cincinnati, and second-team All-AAC at Cincinnati last season. So I think overall you got to like who Carolina's bringing in. I think it's a kind of a healthy mixture of guys that probably aren't expecting to come in and start. And you've also got a list of guys in there that are probably expecting and probably will come in and be big time contributors for the Tar Heels. So AJ, when you look at these 6 transfer portal pickups that, again, we're recording this on Friday morning, so this is who Carolina's gotten so far. What are your thoughts on these guys? And because to me, I think they do fill a lot of needs that Carolina has right now. Like I said, picking up some depth at defensive back, getting a kicker out of the portal who's proven, who I think Carolina needs, picking up an offensive lineman as well, and a wide receiver who I think could end up being big time contributors for the Tar Heels. So what are your thoughts on the 6 guys that Carolina has picked up as of right now?
Well, I think 4 of them fit immediate needs. One, Lampkin. 2 would be Huzzy, in no particular order. 3 would be Coe, and 4 would be Walker. I'll start with Lampkin. He was a center this year, but he played guard before that. And I think he might be the most important pickup because of the uncertainty right now with the offensive line in 2023. And part of that uncertainty is, will Corey Gaynor get the waiver by the NCAA and come back and get a 7th year of college football? He only played in 2. He's already used his COVID year already. He only played in 2 games in 21 for Miami before a season-ending injury. So he basically lost a year there. And the NCAA, Carolina's pretty confident he's going to get this waiver because the NCAA really isn't saying no to anybody right now. It's almost like that realm of the building in Indianapolis has been vacant for 2 years. There's nobody working. So they feel pretty optimistic they're going to get the waiver there. But if they don't, Lampkin can step in and start at center. If they do get the waiver, Lampkin can step in and replace Montelis at guard. And I actually think that they brought him in to replace Montelis. Ed Montelis told the team he was originally looking at some possible NFL stuff and coming back, and then decided here recently that he's just too banged up. He's been playing injured all year, something we didn't know about, and I didn't know about until this past week when a very good source in the program told me that he's just been really banged up, but he's been fighting through it. He just doesn't want to play football anymore after the bowl game. He's going to retire. He's going to move on, and as Mack says, enter the real world. So I think they brought Lampkin in as a replacement for Montelis first, but also the flexibility. Look, the more guys you have on your offensive line that have snapped the ball a lot in game situations, the better off you are. Yes. So they'll have that with him regardless, because, they had Brian Anderson, who didn't really get on the field this year, backing up Gaynor all year, but they were in great shape in case something happened to Gaynor. So if Gaynor does get the waiver and comes back, they'll be in really good shape again if something happens to him next year because they'll have Lampkin. So I like that pickup. I think that's the most important one because you must be solid, and you must not have chaos on your offensive line if you're going to be a really good team. And when you've got such a unbelievable commodity behind those guys in Drake May, you got to keep them healthy. And I think Lampkin helps in that sense. I'm a big Elijah Huzzie fan. I know Dina was all over him right out of the gate. They need some moxie in the secondary, and he's a moxie guy. He had 6 picks this year. And we see a lot of dudes that come from the East Tennessee states, that will, especially at skill positions, that go to the NFL. They're all over the place. Look at NFL rosters. Just go to every team site and read the roster. Don't read the players. Just look at where the schools they're from. And there are dudes like this all over the place. Oh, yeah. A lot of them are skill guys. And so now a lot of these players have a chance to just up at the end of a year and go to a higher level of college football and really show off who they are. And that's what Huzzie has done here. I expect him to step in and start at one of the corners. I really do. I think he's a guy that's going to be really, really good for this team. He's got a lot of experience. And that's sort of a theme with a lot of this class here, Jacob. But when I say class, it's now a portal class, that they're bringing in guys that didn't play just a little at Power Fives and still have to learn how to play college football. They're bringing in guys that have played a lot at smaller G5s and even the FCS level, but they know how to be college football players. They know how to prepare, go through the routine of playing and then learning from the film and then going back and preparing, and they're accomplished. So they have a lot of confidence. Huzzie fits that perfectly. I also think Ryan Coe is a guy. I'm not a big fan of the third stop for a player, but that's kind of becoming the norm. That I know that a couple of years ago when Texas Tech had a guy that started a point guard national title game, that was his third school. People were like, well, how is he really a Red Raider? Well, now it's just kind of common. It happens all over the place. They need a kicker. You need to be competent in that department. And I think they feel good about that. And the last one is Walker. He's the one that excites most everybody because they know what he did against Georgia, and he was electrifying this year in a Mack, which is a pretty good league. So he's a guy that has played against really good opponents. He's going to step right in Chapel Hill, probably expected to start as well. He's someone that could take the top off of a defense. They need that. And I think he'll blend in with what they have coming back. And that includes Andre Green and also what they have coming in. Because I think Christian Hamilton and Chris Culliver are 2 kids that would have a chance at playing right away, depending on how the returning players have developed through the offseason. So those are the 4, I think, that will play right away and play a lot right away. And quite frankly, I expect Lampton, Huzzie, Coe, and Walker to all start. I expect them to all be first in the depth chart.
Yeah. And then you got the likes of Derek Allen and Amari Chapman at DB. They're probably just going to, I mean, who knows what will happen, but probably coming in to fill in some of that depth there that they desperately need. Yeah.
Allen could start. I mean, he could start.
Chapman started 11 games at Virginia Tech last year, so he could as well.
Yeah, and they weren't terrible defensively. Their problem was they couldn't move the ball to save their lives. So, the offenses in the Commonwealth this year were putrid. So, throughout the Commonwealth.
Yes, true.
So those guys, all 6 could end up well, I don't know if Chapman, Allen, and Huzzie all will, but I wouldn't be surprised if they all play.
Oh, yeah. No doubt.
We'll see. But the 4 that I mentioned, they fill immediate needs. And they fill needs with – and they're the kinds of players that you can pretty much pencil in. And if you can't, and it's not because they've underperformed once they arrive, but more so other guys have developed and progressed, and that's not a bad thing. But I think they help themselves a lot. In fact, I think they're getting from the portal a lot more than they lost into the portal. And I know that might not make sense given that they lost quite a few starters, but I think it was time for a refreshing in the secondary. And they did that. They did it from within with Marcus Allen and Will Hardy, and they're doing it with guys like Huzzie, Allen, and Chapman.
Yeah, no doubt. And they just lost so much depth back there and just so many guys there that they didn't really have a choice but to dip into that transfer portal and grab some guys because
I think they got better.
Yeah, I do too.
I think they got better.
I think all around they got better, and I think it'll be interesting to see how these guys not only develop when they get here. I know a couple of them only here for 1 year, but some of the other guys will be here for a couple seasons, and I think that'll
some of it, Jacob, was addition by subtraction.
Yeah,
and I'm not going to go into that too much. And some of it was just because There's some high-end stuff here. Hussey's got big-time high-end. He's got NFL high-end potential. Mm-hmm. So now he has an opportunity to do that at a much higher level on a consistent basis. So the Carolina fans should be very, very happy with how the portal played out for the program on both ends.
Agreed. And who knows? I mean, maybe they'll snag a few more guys. It's still some time to do that. So we'll see what kind of happens over the next few weeks. And obviously keep it locked to TarHillIllustrated.com for when that does happen, if it does happen. So, AJ, let's move on to the bowl preview, kind of the last thing I want to hit on in this podcast. And obviously the Holiday Bowl against number 15 ranked Oregon, who sits at 9 and finished the year 9-3, 7-2 in the Pac-12. We've hit on it a couple weeks ago in the football show when it first came out that they were going to this bowl. And I think it's a very interesting matchup. And here's why. Oregon, an offense that's just been fantastic this year, ranks 4th nationally in total offense, averaging 507.8 yards per game. And defensively, kind of similar to Carolina, not as great. Number 75th ranked in total defense at 386.1 yards per game. Don't get me wrong, Carolina defensively would love to be sitting at number 75 ranked overall with the year they've had. And that's no disrespect to them, but I think Carolina's sitting out like 115 nationally in total defense. So if they could jump 30 spots, I think Carolina would have had an even better season and probably wouldn't be playing in this bowl game, if we're being honest with you. But Oregon, kind of similar to Carolina, sputtering towards the end of the year a little bit, lost 2 out of their last 3, including their last loss coming to their rival in Oregon State. So a team that, maybe limping in a little bit like Carolina has, maybe not as much as Carolina has with some of the struggles they've had, but still not on fire right now coming into this one. And it starts with Bo Nix. I don't think I'm any revelations here. He's the guy for him, and he's just had a fantastic season, his best season at Oregon by far, throwing for over 3,389 yards, which is 16th nationally, 27 touchdowns with his 15th now nationally, just 6 interceptions and 87.2 QBR rating, which is his, just his best season by far at Oregon, like I said. And AJ, looking at some of the other guys, I don't want to go too in depth on Oregon like we usually do. I think it's a typical Pac-12 team, really good offense. It's at least at the upper echelons of the Pac-12, really good offense and a not so great defense. But just looking at some of the guys individually on offense that could cause Carolina some problems. You got Bucky Irving at running back, who's close to having a 1,000-yard season with a 906 yards on the season, 6.3 yards per carry. So really good year for him. Troy Franklin's kind of their go-to guy at wide receiver, 867 receiving yards, 15.5 yards per catch. So a deep threat guy for them for sure. And then on the defensive side of the ball, DB Bennett Williams leads the team in tackles with 67, and defensive end Brandon Dorless leads the team with 2.5 sacks per game. So, Edge, I think it's an interesting matchup because it's kind of very similar to a Carolina team, a really good offense and a defense that's okay, but not great. And that's kind of what Carolina's going to be, facing, because I think it's not necessarily a team that matches Carolina's strengths. You got a Carolina team that's good on offense and has really struggled at times, but has improved on defense, which I know we talked about a little bit off camera with some of the stats. But Carolina's defense going up against a number 4 ranked offense nationally is a little bit of a concern. But for on the opposite side, if Carolina can figure things out again on the offensive side of the ball, I know they kind of sputtered towards the end of the season. This is an Oregon defense that will give up points and that has given up points this year. So I think it's going to be interesting to watch, and I think it'll no doubt be a shootout, but we'll see what happens. But what are your overall thoughts on the matchup that lies ahead and just the challenge that Oregon presents for the Tar Heels?
I think Oregon's defense is better than 75 if you're trying to compare Carolina being 30 spots behind. They're better offenses in the Pac-12 than in the ACC. The ACC
no doubt.
Was just wasn't very good offensively this year. Carolina played Virginia Tech. They had a horrible offense. Virginia had a horrible offense. Georgia Tech had a bad offense. Miami's offense stunk. Mm-hmm. And they gave up almost 500 passing yards to Van Dyke in that game. So there weren't Pitt's offense was okay. Duke had a pretty good offense. Wake had a good offense. NC State's offense wasn't much.
Appalachian State didn't have a great year. Still let up 60 points.
Yeah. I mean, I think that Oregon might be 30 spots ahead of Carolina in the national total defense ranking, but I bet Oregon's defense is even more than that better, because there's some really good team offenses in that league. The Pac-12 had great quarterbacks. The year that Penix had at Washington after transferring from Indiana, which is a great example of why quarterbacks transferring find new life. It could be really good somewhere else. Bo Nix is another example of that. Remember when Bo Nix and Sam Howell were true freshmen, and they were a couple games into their careers, and a lot of the talk nationally was which one of these two guys will end up a possible first-round pick. And
Yeah, no.
Howell ended up fifth round. He's in the NFL now, and Nix ended up leaving, going to Oregon, and found himself there. So I think he's made himself into an NFL player there. I think that this is a matchup that is kind of good for both teams because there are some elements that they can exploit. The one area in Oregon's defense that has struggled and probably will struggle on December 28th is its pass defense, because Drake can make anybody look bad. Drake's worst games this year were still games that were much better than average games for a lot of other solid college quarterbacks. And I think Carolina's offense is going to be a little bit different. We saw some issues late, and Mack isn't hiding it. If you listen to what he says, we were pretty good offensively through 10 games. Then the last three, the defense wasn't bad the last three games. It was the offense that just went into the tank. Mm-hmm. And I think they became way too reliant on Josh Downs. And Phil kind of tightened up late with some of the play calling. Their red zone offense, in their first 49 trips to the red zone this year, they scored 43 times and they had 39 touchdowns. In their last 17 trips to the red zone, they had 5 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. So they changed.
No doubt.
And they became too predictable. They became two-dimensional. Josh and then Drake running. So I think we're going to see them go back to a little bit more what they were early in the year when Drake was spreading the ball around. And Josh isn't playing. But you do have Antoine Green. You do have the guy that can take the top off the defense. I can see him using Pacer. I can see him using Blackwell a lot. I can see him using JJJ a lot. I can see him using the tight ends a lot more. They didn't go to the tight ends as much late. So a lot of Carolina's issues offensively as we got into the last few weeks of the season were self-inflicted. And a lot of it was part of the plan. A lot of it was how Phil got into the game as it went on. I think Phil's a phenomenal offensive coordinator, but he wasn't at his best the last 3 games of this season. There's no doubt about it. So as far as Oregon being a club that can exploit, I think so. Oregon was pretty good against the run this year, but there were a lot of passing defenses that they faced. So maybe some of that skewed because they didn't have as many rushing attempts. But I think Carolina should be able to score. I expect Drake to play at a very high level. I think this is a really important game for him going into next year. And I think it's an even more important game for this program to get a win, play well, especially offensively, going into next year when Chip Lindsey takes over and Randy Clements runs the offensive line, which definitely needs some work. And they can actually send themselves in the offseason in a very, very positive note, and especially if they play well. Winning is one thing, but playing well and winning, I think, in a bowl game means a whole lot more. And I think that's what this team needs. And for that to happen, the offense has to pop. They got to touch a lot. The ball has to touch a lot of hands. Mm-hmm. And I think that's going to be the approach going in with Lonnie Galloway calling plays, and he and John Lilly kind of having a lot to do with the game plan and how they go through the course of the game.
Agreed. And I think it should be. I think you're completely right. I think Carolina's looked at its best this year when it has spread the ball around and not just been like, yeah, we're just going to throw to Josh Downs and give the ball to Elijah Green, and that's just what we're going to do. And Drake May's going to run a little bit, and those are the 3 guys that we're going to rely on. I think we've seen so many times this year when everybody's involved, multiple guys get scoring touchdowns, Carolina's been at its best offensively. So that'll definitely be interesting to watch for. Let me correct myself from earlier. I said Bo Nix having his best season at Oregon. I meant to say having his best season as a college football quarterback, because he obviously spent 3 years at Auburn. It's his first year at Oregon, and go look at his stats. He's been lighting it up this year and been absolutely fantastic, and is returning like Drake May to Oregon next year. Drake May announced he's coming back to Carolina, so some similarities there as well. So we're still a little ways out, but we'll do a prediction for last prediction of the year. Why not? I haven't submitted mine yet. We're going to do it probably later today. So this is on the fly for me. I'm going to say, let's go 30. I'm going to say 31-28 Oregon. Actually, I'm going to go 38-34 Oregon. I think it's going to be a high scoring game. I think Oregon, again, the way I said it after the state game when Carolina lost it, I just felt like this season had 5 losses written all over it for North Carolina. I just, I haven't seen Carolina play well in their last, few games. I've seen them really hit some new lows this year under the Clemson game. Obviously Clemson's a great team, but I just thought Carolina offered absolutely nothing in that game. that really breeds any confidence to think they're going to go out west and shut down an Oregon offense that's really good and be able to put up points, especially with the offensive coordinator and Phil Longo gone. Again, that could be a blessing for this team and could end up helping in this last game with spreading the ball around more and maybe fixing some of those red zone issues. So I think Carolina will play better offensively in the game. But again, I just don't have much confidence that Carolina's gonna be able to stop this Oregon team and make stops down the stretch when it needs to. I wouldn't be surprised if Oregon wins by a wider margin, to be honest. And in some ways, I wouldn't be surprised if Carolina goes out there and wins. But I just haven't seen enough in recent weeks and in recent games, I should say, to think Carolina's going to be able to go out there and do it. So I'm going to say 38-34. I'm not super confident in that prediction. I think that scoreline is probably a little bit too close to be in either direction, to be honest with you. But that's my prediction. What are you thinking, AJ? I'm sure this is a on the fly one for you as well.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about a prediction actually.
Me either. That's just off the top of my head.
But I will say this: Carolina's defense did play better as the year went on.
They've improved
by the time we've run this podcast, I ran a piece inside the defensive numbers, and they cut down more than in half the number of big runs they allowed. 15+ yard runs, 10+ yard runs. They had a lot more success blitzing the last 5-6 games. They kept stuff in front of them more. They weren't giving up as many catastrophics. They were better defensively. And some of those guys are gone, but part of the reason they were better, Marcus Allen played the last few games. Will Hardy was playing a ton late. And I just think that those guys are good. And now they've been preparing like starters for a couple of weeks, and I fully expect them, especially Hardy, to play like sort of like a been there, done that guy. And I think that's really important when you go up against an offense like Oregon's. But I think Carolina's defense has an opportunity to begin the 2023 season on a positive note on December 28th, 2022. That doesn't mean they're going to, I'm saying shut down Oregon. I just think that they have a chance to play really well, and they might play better than people expect. Because I think the other factor here is who's excited to be there. The Tar Heels were not excited to be in the Duke's Mayo Bowl last year. South Carolina was, and South Carolina knocked the crap out of them. It was a pummeling from the opening kick. How fired up is Oregon that lost 2 of its last 3, was 8-1 and being considered, was right near the CFP.
Yeah, they were far off.
I mean, Carolina was in the periphery of the conversation about CFP. It wasn't legitimate. They were never going to make the CFP even if they went out, unless there was just unbridled chaos in front of them, and that chaos didn't occur. If Carolina would have beaten Tech and beaten State and beaten Clemson, they wouldn't be in there over any of the 4 that are there now.
No.
So they were never going to be there. But had Oregon won out, they might be in there right now. Mm-hmm. So how fired up are they to go to the San Diego Padres ballpark and play an ACC team?
That's a good point.
I think that might determine the outcome of the game. Because in bowl games, often we see just one team shows up.
Yeah, it happens so often, yeah.
And there's no – you can guess and say, well, it would make sense that Oregon would be the less likely team to be totally dialed in. I asked Mack earlier this week about the readiness of his team compared to this time a year ago, and he says, yes. But does that mean that when they fly across country today, the 23rd, we're recording this on the 23rd, and they're going to go to, I guess, the San Diego Zoo, which is a famous zoo. They're going to visit one of the ships out there, one of the Navy ships out there, aircraft carriers. They're going to do a lot of things. So where's their readiness going to be? Maybe they're the team that isn't ready to play. I don't know. I think if you were to have to choose one of the two that's most likely to not be ready to play, it would be Oregon, given the circumstances. So with that being said, and with me also noting that the defense did get better late, I think Carolina has a chance in this game, but I don't think they're going to win. The big play is still going to beat them because the big play beats them. And Oregon, I think, is going to have too many of its components, of its winning components on the field. So if all things are even, if both teams are ready to play, I think the quack attack wins this game. We're talking in the 30. I like your 38-34 range. That's not my pick because I haven't done it yet. I'll do it when I lay out our staff picks. but I think Oregon by around a touchdown. And I do believe that it'll be a decent amount of scoring. The game is on Fox. It's on national network TV on Fox. So I think that they're going to get some pretty good numbers for it. And it would be pretty cool if you have all Carolina blue versus all that Oregon green. It'd be a neat looking game, and it'll be an exciting game. And it might be something that can help the Tar Heels moving forward. Yeah. The exposure and playing against a program that people like to watch. These are two teams that people will watch. So it has a chance to be a very, very interesting, fun game, a good environment at Petco, and some decent TV numbers. So I think Carolina's in a very winnable situation as far as all those other things go.
Agreed, AJ. And for those who may not know, December 28th is the date, and at 8 p.m. Eastern time, I should say, kickoff in Petco Park in San Diego. Obviously, AJ will be there. And I think the line right now, don't quote me on this because I saw this when the lines first came out. It was, I believe it still is today, 14.5-point underdogs for the Tar Heels. And I think from at least when it came out, and it might not be the same anymore, but I do remember somebody saying that Carolina is the biggest underdog out of the bowl selections right now. Like the biggest spread has been North Carolina being a 14.5-point underdog. So yeah, and I guess I need to double check that because I remember someone talking about that when it first came out, which was probably a week ago or so now. But yeah, Carolina definitely one of the biggest underdogs in the bowl, if not the biggest underdog for the bowl team. So that's something to keep in mind, and not really surprised. You look at Carolina's played. I think national television kind of getting offered, like I said, really offering nothing against Clemson probably left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths, and the national perception of North Carolina, with you look at just how they've struggled over the last few games, is not, in the ACC too. It's just not been a great year, particularly in the Coastal Division. Like you said, just some absolutely abysmal offenses.
When has it been a great year in the Coastal Division?
That's a good point, man. It feels like
the best thing about ACC football right now is that the Coastal Division is going.
Yeah, see you later, buddy.
They're just going to lump everybody together next year.
Yeah, we'll have to hear any more of that Coastal.
I didn't realize that was a spread. I don't look at spreads.
Yeah,
and they don't really mean anything to me. Although I saw where Iowa lost to Eastern Illinois in basketball, and they were like a 35-point.
Yeah, you'll see that a couple times.
That's interesting. Yeah. That's interesting because you should have a whooping in a game like that. But I think 14.5 is a lot. That's a lot against a team with Drake May at quarterback.
I know.
So
I agree. And we'll see what happens. And I would be shocked if Carolina lost by that much. But then again, I was shocked when they played as bad as they did against South Carolina in the Duke's Mayo Bowl last year, too. So anything can happen in bowl season. You were right. It seems like every bowl game, it's one team shows up and the other team never gets off the plane. So we'll see what happens on Wednesday night, correct? I don't think I'm wrong. Is it Wednesday night?
Yeah. Yes, I get to go to a big league ballpark I haven't been in yet, so I'm excited about that.
It's a damn good baseball team over there too in San Diego, one of the better ones in the MLB. So that'll be I heard you told me it's one of the nicest stadiums in the MLB too, right?
Especially when I go to the best ballparks. So I just don't want to see any Manny Machado stuff.
Yeah, I hear that. It might have best weather, some of the best weather in the country, I think, this time of year too out there.
All of us who root for this, we're not.
Make sure you wear your Oregon. I used to love him. Make sure you wear your Oregon lanyard out there.
Orioles, yeah. I used to.
Orioles landed, yeah. Got Oregon.
I love Manny Machado, but he didn't run out some ground balls, and then he left, and whatever.
Yeah, I'm looking forward
to. I have to keep that in me. I have to keep an element of fan in me because I can't be a fan with my job, but I can be a fan with that. So if I see a Manny Machado jersey or something like that, I'll just look the other way.
Yeah, look away, man. I know you'll be wearing the Orioles lanyard too, so I know that'll be on you as well. I know you won't be able to resist doing that, walking into that ballpark. So, yeah, AJ will be out there, like I said. So make sure you keep it locked to TarIllustrated.com for all your coverage from that game, and obviously basketball's in full swing too. So all your coverage for North Carolina basketball as well. But we're gonna go ahead and wrap this up. I guess it's the last regular season episode of the UNC Football Show. I should say the last preview show as well, with this being Carolina's last game of the year. So appreciate everybody who's followed along throughout the season. Go ahead and give this video a like below, and Merry Christmas to everybody as well, because this will be the last podcast we're probably on before Christmas. Is recording this a day before Christmas Eve. So Merry Christmas, everyone. Appreciate everybody watching, following us along throughout the year, and here's to an even better year in 2023.
No doubt.
So guys, I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. We appreciate you watching. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell as well, so you know every single time we upload, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Thanks.